I love Christmas, you know that, and I love Christmas cookies, especially the traditions that are attached to it. A date and nut pinwheel cookie is something my family has always made. My grandma and mom loved them, and I actually really love them too. And I think if we bring back some of these old recipes, you are gonna gain a taste for it, your kids will gain a taste for it, and not always look for the ones that we think of as normal. These pinwheels are really delicious, and they're also beautiful because they're rolled up tightly, and you cut them and bake them, kind of like a refrigerator cookie, and you see all the twist in them and how beautiful they are. So to start, we wanna make our filling, which encompasses dates. So I have my chopped medjool dates that I pitted and then just chopped up. Now, you can buy pitted ones and that makes it a little bit easier. So if you want to do that, that's totally fine. I love dates because I think they are in season actually close to this time of year. So they are so delicious. You can even get kind of fresh ones. They are just like candy, but they're nature's candy. So I think somehow we should feel better about that. Gonna add a little bit of water. It just kind of helps it cook down because we're making kind of more of a paste as opposed to a sauce since it goes in a cookie. Some maple syrup. And again, it adds a little bit of flavor, a little bit of sweetness, but also just kind of makes it get a good spreading consistency. And then I think dates always need to be offset. They need something kind of punch it up and bring out a good kind of like citrus note. So I do orange zest. And I'm just using a microplane grater and I'm just getting that orange right on the outside of the rind. You don't want to get the pith, the white part, but just that beautiful zest that has all of those oils in it. Put it right in there. That just smells, I find orange, especially when it's like with dates or something, just to smell, it smells Christmassy and I love that. I'm gonna put the juice of that orange in there too. And I love, citrus is coming into season here right around this time of year too. January is the high time for like any good citrus. So it's kind of starting now, which I love too. So you can use all those good flavors. So I'm gonna take this over to the stove. We're gonna bring it to a very low simmer and then just let it cook a little bit till it comes together. I'm gonna put this over just a low heat, kind of medium low maybe, and let it come up to a slow simmer. You don't want to necessarily cook it hard or like, start it really intensely boiling, but what it's gonna do in about 5 minutes is what it usually takes once it starts cooking, is it cooks off the majority of that excess kind of water and liquid, but it helps the dates kind of break down, become more of a paste, and just really brings everything together. So let this cook, and then we have to let it cool completely before we move on. As you can see, it has really cooked down, and it's really almost like a paste. You don't have that excess liquid in the bottom. This is perfect and will spread into the cookies just beautifully. So I'm gonna pull it off the heat, I'm gonna let it cool down, and then we're gonna make some cookies. So we made the mixture for the cookies, and now we need to actually make the dough. We need a dough for cookies, and it's a pretty simple one. We're gonna put some butter in to our mixer. We're gonna add some granulated white sugar, and then we're gonna add some brown sugar. So you kind of get both, the best of both. What I love about the brown sugar in any recipe, obviously, it just adds that caramely flavor, and I really do think it makes a difference. We're gonna put the paddle on, and we're just gonna mix that until it's somewhat creamed. You don't have to have it be like light and fluffy necessarily, but just well combined. You can tell it's well combined, and then it's creaming because it's starting to kind of congregate around the bottom of the bowl. That just shows you it's actually starting to be well combined. So to that, we're just gonna add an egg. Just one egg. You don't want these to get too lofty or too big. We're gonna mix in that egg until it's completely mixed in. You don't want any streaks. So I'm gonna scrape the bowl, just because in these large mixers, especially when you're not doing a huge amount of dough or something, you can actually get a lot stuck in the bottom and it kind of around the divot there. And so I like to make sure and just scrape it, make sure you get it all, and then we'll keep mixing it, because if you don't get the egg all mixed in, it affects the dough. It's all of our wet ingredients, it's well mixed. So now we're just gonna add our dry. So we're gonna add some flour. I always, if you watch my videos, you know this. I scoop, because it kind of sifts it as you're going. You overfill your measuring cup, that's the important part here, and then you swipe it off. So then you get a really good level, and it's not packed in there where you're gonna get too much flour. Even, it sounds stupid, but even a little bit too much flour can really affect a recipe, make it a little bit drier, more tough. So we have our sugar, flour, it's flour. Oh, guys, sometimes I get these cookies all mixed up. It's flour. We're gonna add in some salt, just a little bit. You need to offset, and then some baking soda. It's not a lot, because again, we don't want these to have a lot of lift or anything, but it's just enough. We're gonna mix that in until it's just combined. So once it's mixed, you can kind of see it's nothing special, but I'm gonna take off any of the extra bits. You wanna get all the dough. I hate when people don't clean a beater, and you have to do it with your hand. There's really no easy way to do that. So we're gonna take it, and then I'm just going to make sure it's all combined. Obviously, it's always the last thing. Make sure it kind of comes into a cohesive mass, which it does. And we're gonna put it into a bowl, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna chill it, because it's easier. We have to roll these out, kind of like a cinnamon roll cookie or something like that. And it just makes it so it's easier to work with after it's chilled. So I'm gonna push it together, because it's a little bit more of a crumbly dough. Don't worry about that. It gives it a really nice texture when they're baked. You can see how nice it looks. It's a nice dough. It's a good, kind of just shape it into somewhat of a ball. And I'm gonna cover it, put it in the fridge, just long enough to give it a slight chill. It just rolls out a little bit easier. So I'm gonna pop it in the fridge, then we're gonna make some pinwheels. So I have my dough here that we chilled. It's all just a nice little dough. And I kind of always like to start by shaping it just slightly into a square rectangle. I feel since that's the overall shape, obviously we want to roll it out to. It makes it a little bit easier. I don't know if it really does, but you know, when you're rolling something out, it always gets askew from the shape you want. So let's hope this helps a little bit. And I am gonna put just very lightly, even though I'm putting it on parchment, I'm just gonna flour it just a little bit. You don't want it to really stick, which it is not too bad at that, but the reason I like parchment is because you can easily roll it around, you can move the parchment easily, and then we're gonna actually roll it up, and I just think it makes it easier too. So I'm gonna roll this out into a pretty large rectangle, then we fill it, roll it, and let it chill again. So a couple steps, but still worth it. I'm finished rolling this out. It's really actually easy dough to work with, and don't worry about those edges being a little off. It's forgiven once you roll it up. This is that mixture we made on the stove earlier with the dates, all those wonderful flavors. I'm adding in some toasted and chopped walnuts. I am someone that loves any type of toasted nut in a cookie, especially at Christmas. So I'm stirring that in. And as you can see, it doesn't look too pretty in here. It's a paste. And the reason you wanted to let it fully cool before we put it on was because it would kind of melt the dough otherwise, which is not good. So it's at room temperature now, slightly cool to the touch. And I'm spreading it out just like in dollops all over. That makes it easier to spread evenly. If you just put one central dollop, you have to really work at it and you can tear the dough, which you don't want to do. So if you kind of do some of the work beforehand, it's not as hard, or, you know, because it's so hard to make cookies sometimes, you guys. Oh, the hard things we do at Christmas. I'm joking. So there it is. Now we're just gonna spread it out with an offset spatula. You can see it spreads pretty easily because it's still just at room temperature. Oh, these cookies, they're just beautiful when you're finished. They're a really pretty cookie. And they're one that probably a lot of people, especially anymore, won't have or have remembered, but these were one of my grandma's favorites, and actually still one of my mom's favorites, which means, you guessed it, they've become one of mine. But they really are just a delicious cookie. And I think what I like about them is, you know, some cookies are just sweet. They're just cloyingly sweet and you really don't taste anything. These have like flavor, and they have things that we're just not used to. So I'm gonna leave about probably an inch, maybe just half an inch up here at the top, because that's where I'm gonna roll to. And then that will help me close it up a little bit easier, because you don't want this filling just to push out as we're rolling it up as much. So we're gonna leave just a little bit of space there. Oh, look at that, it's beautiful. So now we're just gonna start rolling, which honestly, the parchment makes it a lot easier. I'm gonna slightly lift the parchment and just pull it back. See how I'm pulling it back? And I'm pushing it onto that filling. I kind of get started there. You can see my initial beginning. And then I'm just going to slowly work that up and make sure it has a good roll going. And then you can kind of just pull back and it does the work for you, see? And I like the parchment for that reason. so easy. I love how, seriously, you can even go the other way if you want to, or if you need to kick it back and then bring it back. Look how easy that is. I love that. Now what I do is you can kind of try to press it down in, but honestly, as it sits now, it will do that for you. So I roll it over onto its seam, so it kind of presses it down in as it goes. And then I just take this parchment, both sides, and I'm just gonna now stick this in my fridge. You could also, at this point, if you wanted to make this a month ahead, a few weeks before, a few days before, you could put this whole log in the freezer. It's really just a fridge cookie at this point. But I'm gonna put it in the fridge. It just helps solidify it, but it also helps it so it cuts so much easier. Then we're gonna have some beautiful cookies to bake. So these have been in the fridge, chilling. Like I said, you can do that way before. You can do it, you know, the day before, even more. But if you're gonna do it like more than a day before, I would put them in the freezer. So at this point, all we do is we start cutting them, and it's pretty easy. The end one is always a little bit of a hit or miss, because as you can see, the filling doesn't get quite out to there. So you can bake it up and you can just eat it, but it may not be one that you just serve to, you know, anyone and everyone. Oh, guys, I love these. They're so pretty. So you just cut them. This is honestly what I love about a fridge cookie in general, how easy and carefree it is. It takes just a little bit of time to put together, but then you can just have them in the, oh, this is what I love. Look at the cut. You see the nuts, you see that beautiful date filling. It's just a special cookie. So I'm gonna cut and fill this pan, and then we're gonna bake them off. Guys, we're just gonna have a good time. That's what these are. They're a good time cookie. The pan's full. I'm gonna throw it in the oven. And then guys, when I take them out, I'm gonna let them cool and then show you how perfect and beautiful and delicious they are. I love a cookie. I have my last batch in the oven. I have these out cooling. As you can tell, they get nice and golden brown around the edges. They puff up just slightly. The bottoms are nice and golden too. You don't wanna over bake them, as you don't anything, because then it would get kind of dry, not as good. But do you notice how the pinwheel now really comes out and how pretty that is? That's what I love about these cookies, how they just have that gorgeous, extra special look to them. You knew I was gonna try them, right? You guys, I love these. They have just like that slight crisp on the edge, but still that soft cookie interior. And then when you get the hit of that date filling with the nuts and just that little hint of orange in there, it really makes it pop and brings out all the flavor. These are so good. I think they're gonna be a new staple in your house, especially for Christmas. A new tradition can be started. They're actually really fun, they're easy. They'd be fun to do with kids, especially because they'd love to see that pinwheel come out as you're cutting them and then you bake them. So I really hope you try these. As always, what helps me out so much is when you guys share these videos around. That helps me so much, and it also helps so many people see these videos so they can bake and be inspired to do these things too. Because that's what Christmas is all about. Passing on traditions, sharing recipes with loved ones, and inviting people into your home, even if it's virtually. You're all invited in. So I hope you do share these around. Check out wiseguide.com, my website, for this recipe, other great recipes. And until we meet again, which will be soon, make some cookies, enjoy a nice cozy drink, and have a good Christmas.